Trap squad, 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 trap squad. Hey, clickbaity political. Yeah, thirst trap, trap squad, squirrel squad. Our mission is critical to speak the truth to the masses. Yeah. We here for the fight. We ain't started, but we here to finish it. Sick and tired of seeing the privilege. Take advantage of the weak and the innocent. So we let our voice be heard. Every single weeknight. Unapologetic. Yeah. Black people, despite this white supremacist system that we live through on a daily, we still throwing up those acorns cause we represent clickbaity. Yeah. Trap squad, let me hear ya. Trap squad, trap squad. Throw those squirrels up if you with it. Trap squad, trap squad. Yeah, I see you, yeah, I see you. Trap squad, trap squad. Trap squad, ThirstTrap. Trap squad, trap squad. Trap squad, let me hear ya. Trap squad, trap squad. Throw those squirrels up if you with it. Trap squad, trap squad. Yeah, I see you, yeah, I see you. Trap squad, trap squad. Trap squad, ThirstTrap.
Tragically nervous about what it means to see Donald Trump and also this country, argue and advocate for defunding the World Health Organization, who don't just save lives in Africa, but they also save lives all over America. And the work that they're doing definitely benefits the lives of so many people in this country. I will say, to go a step further, also, this is what we're witnessing. I promise you, people can say there's been bad presidents in the past. We've not seen anything like we're seeing right now, and this attempt to take monies back in the time of a pandemic, an international pandemic from the World Health Organization, who yes had missteps as it pertains to how they handled China, but it is dangerous to take funds at this time from this organization only because Trump wants to blame somebody other than him for his reckless behavior as it pertained to COVID February, January time.
So I agree with both of you guys, and of course I slightly disagree because that is my want. Here's the thing about it. I understand why Trump does it. It's just bad strategy, and the main fact is Donald Trump doesn't want any other organization or any other country or any other entity other than himself to possibly take credit for solving the problem. And he's more concerned about not getting credit. Forget even solving it. He's more concerned about not getting credit than he is about looking bad. If the World Health Organization came out with a magical cure tomorrow that was cocoa butter and banana peels, right? He would make banana peels illegal because he wants to get the credit. He doesn't want Dr. Fauci to get the credit. He doesn't want anybody else to get the credit. And that's the problem. When you have someone who's more concerned, I joke all the time with people. I say, I'm the kind of person that I hate losing more than I love winning. It's very Jordan-esque. Donald Trump is one of those people that, he hates not getting credit more than he has a problem with people disliking him. He doesn't even have a problem with people disliking him. He just wants to be able to take credit for things. And that's part of what we're facing in this crisis. But that being said, so moving from this idea of taking credit, I think it's important that we also take a look at how all of this is playing out in the eyes of your average American. And I want to hit you guys with something that we don't quite have planned, but I think this is crucial. If I am Joe or Jane average, Keisha or Derek or something else like that living throughout this country. And we talked a little about this earlier with one of your local representatives who actually endorsed the President of the United States. What is a Black person today who voted for Trump in 2016? What are they thinking now about who they would vote for in 2020? Like, they're looking at Donald Trump now. Let's assume, and let's be fair, right? 14% of African-American men who voted in 2016, they voted for Trump. 14%. It was a really, really high number. And those brothers aren't all Republicans. What do we say to those brothers now, looking at, say, how Trump is handling COVID-19 and facing 20 million people unemployed? What's the story to that person now to bring them out to not just vote again, but to vote against this guy and get him out of office?
we're not at that place yet, in my personal opinion. And to be honest with you, it's going to take a couple of weeks before, until everything settles down, before brothers are going to be like, yeah, Trump is all bad. Look what happened in Georgia. A black man who ran for state representative just literally endorsed Donald Trump. Not saying it's right. Well, definitely not saying it's right.
None of us are saying it's right.
Right. Yes. But here's the thing though. In one of the state representative statements, and I'm gonna go ahead and just jump back for a second and say, Black folks aren't a monolith, right? But right now, in the day and time that we're in right now, if you don't understand how Trump is handling COVID-19, then you really don't understand how you really have no earthly clue on the effect that it has on the community. Now, what do brothers think? Well, let's see if the federal government and Senate Democrats and Senate and congressional Democrats actually pass another bill that actually gives people more money. We'll get into this later on, but small businesses just got defunded. A lot of brothers have small businesses, and I know a lot of brothers who just applied for the SBA loan that just got shut down because they didn't have enough money. So how do I think brothers are going to react to Donald Trump? That's not to be said right now. I know that super voting African American men, they're gonna be like, forget Donald Trump. He's the bad guy. But the problem is the brothers on the street who need some money, and Donald Trump is the one who's literally putting his signature on the checks.
Yeah, that ain't enough. No, like that. All right. First of all, let me kill a couple myths. First of all, 14% is not a lot, and I'm gonna tell you why it's not a lot. If you look at every presidential candidate in modern history, right, since the switch where Black people stopped voting Republican and started voting Democrat, Donald Trump only did better than two other Republicans running for president.
George Bush. Yeah,
but he didn't do better than George Bush. He did better than Mitt Romney and John McCain. That's it. So this idea, I mean, like this, but what I'm saying is we can't tell those brothers, Jason, to get to your question.
Well, quick, hold on, Mondale, just one thing, because I want to make this clear. George Bush got 11% of the African-American vote in 2004. That's the highest of any Republican. I think it was.
Right, that's 11% of the vote, Black vote, but I'm talking about Black men.
Okay. I want to make sure. Okay,
Black men. Right. So Black men. Right. So to get to your question, what can we tell the brothers, or where are those brothers who voted for Trump in 2016? They're where they were in 2016. We can't tell them anything. If a Black man voted for Trump in 2016, he's definitely gonna vote for him in 2020. And everything that he believed in 2016, he believed more now in 2020. That's not our fight. Our fight, though, is to expand the electorate and reach the brothers who are not participating, the brothers who stayed at home when we know 80% of them, 90% of them are gonna vote properly and against Donald Trump. So we don't need to worry about what we tell those brothers who are voting for Trump. That is the equivalent to having a business model that is super successful with 90% of the population, but focusing on the 14% that don't care or don't ever shop at your store. So we don't need to be advocating for anything about like a strategy around those brothers, because that's not our property. I mean, and by property, I don't mean that way. I'm talking about their vote will never be ours, period.
You know what? Here's my only pushback, because you're right about everything that you just said, Mondale, but here's the pushback that I have towards you that we need to actually think about, and it's very important. Some of these brothers are actually talking about the treatment of the Democratic Party and the issues of that, and them taking care of issues of African American men. And to be quite honest with you, if we're receiving nothing, and I say this a lot, it's easy to turn somebody who's receiving nothing than expect somebody to turn up for you who you want to push something for yourself. And as far as I'm concerned, and I'll be very honest with you, every single one of those 15%, those 16% of African American voters.
Was it 16%, guys? Don't say that.
14%.
Thank you.
Of brothers. Oh, sorry. 14% of Black voters, Black male voters that supported Donald Trump in the general election, they have points that a lot of Black men are hearing, but a lot of black men still decide to hold their nose. So I'm gonna give props to black men, because black men hold their nose and vote for Democrats all the time. And I'm one of them. But I also understand that once we get to a place where we are not centered, but just a part of the conversation again, that's when Donald Trump doesn't have an opportunity to even get the 14% of African Americans that might vote.
Marcus, you can't say in one breath that black people aren't a monolith and then the Democrats going to get 100% of the vote. No party is ever going to get 100% of any like.
Do you understand do you understand the point?
I don't.
You understand the points of
Marcus,
what the
I
black
don't.
men are saying that are blatantly voting against the Democratic
Listen
Party?
to me, Marcus. You can't make me understand why a black man will vote for a Republican who are systematically on a regular basis trying to strip us of our right to vote, our enfranchisement, who are trying to lock us up at a higher rate, who stop consent decrees,
But I can explain that. I can explain that, and here's why. I had a conversation a while back, and I'm going to try and speak condensed because I'm going to have to get out of the car.
Yeah, we got a lot of topics. We got a lot of topics tonight, guys.
I had a conversation when I was in New Hampshire for the New Hampshire primary. And I met a brother there who was actually selling Trump t-shirts. He had come up from South Carolina to sell Trump t-shirts. And he's like, this has been good for business, blah, blah, blah. And so he was a Trump voter. Now, he spent 20 minutes telling me how Trump was great and how Trump is good. And I was like, but aren't you concerned about consent decrees and all this other kind of stuff? And he's like, whatever, there's no difference. The Democrats do the same thing. The Democrats want to be communists. I'm a businessman. I'll be selling these t-shirts, et cetera, et cetera. And he was very, very adamant about how basically the parties are no different, but Donald Trump was better for entrepreneurs like himself. Now, the catch to all of this is that he didn't vote. Not only was he wrong, he didn't even vote in 2016. So the man spent 20 minutes of my time telling me,
well, there you go,
how great Trump was. And I was like, oh, so did you vote for him over Hillary in 2016? He's like, well, I don't really believe in voting. I was like, why are you wasting my time? Anyway,
right.
The point of this is that you do have people where their logic is they have such a nihilistic view of everything that's going on in this country that to them, there is no material difference between these parties. And consequently, a black man hearing money, money, money business, CMH over and over again, right? That sounds good to them.
It sounds good, but
I don't think those guys are regular voters either.
Exactly.
But we can't say that they don't exist.
Regular voter or not? Hold on, guys.
There's a reason why I actually brought that up, and the reason is because even though we don't know that in the primary, the problem is a general election black male voter, right? If we're talking about black men, a general election black male voter is susceptible to hearing a lot of things that affect them in their lives. I'm not saying that folks are automatically going to go to Donald Trump. I'm not saying that Donald Trump is even appealing to a general election African American voter, right? Because I don't think he is. But what I will say to you is that the engagement from the campaign or the PAC that we're about to talk about, or whatever entity that decides to engage folks, if their talking points aren't right, then it is what it is. We're leaving ourselves suspect.
First of all, stop it. We just gotta.
Stephen A. Smith.
If Stephen A. Smith is a lover of facts, then if Stephen A. Smith is a fan of facts, they call me Stephen A. Smith. But
first off, that hurts my ears for so many different reasons. But continue.
I hear you, but all I'm trying to say is, guys, we spent the first 20 minutes of our wonderful, precious time talking about a population there will always be a segment of population of black men that will vote Republican, and everybody else. Our job is not them. Our job are the brothers who sit at home. And those brothers were not at home because Donald Trump was on the ballot, because a majority, or not a majority, but nearly half of black men registered in the South have not voted in 5 consecutive elections. Donald Trump's name has not been on the ballot 5 times. Donald Trump isn't the reason brothers are staying home.
Wait, pause. Mondale Robinson, you're sitting up here. Mondale, you're sitting up here.
Hold on.
Now, I want to finish the statement. I'm going to say this right here.
Y'all gonna make me play my
blame as black men.
I'm gonna say
I didn't blame black men, boy. Let me finish my comment.
Hold on. Let me say this. What I said was
for the past 5 elections, half of black men have not voted in an election. That's not a critique of black men. Like I say on every show and every time I speak, voting is a habit formed by resources spent on them. So the critique is that the Democratic Party is not spending resources on black men.
So what I want to add, so Marcus, hold on. So here's what's key here. Here's what's key here. This rolls into our very next topic effectively, and the last topic I'll be able to discuss, because what Mondale is saying and what Marcus is responding to is this idea that the Democratic Party and often progressive groups do not make African Americans in general, but certainly not black men, a priority, which is a perfect roll into the fact that Priorities PAC has come out with some endorsements. And I think it's important because we had a conversation earlier in the week about whether or not endorsements matter. Do all endorsements matter? Do some endorsements matter? Do a little bit of endorsements matter? Is it just the top of the endorsement? Is the whole full endorsement? So my question for you guys, in the context of this conversation about who does and does not to be spoken to, does the Priorities PAC endorsement matter? And what's the significance of it going forward for 2020?
So listen, bigger than Priorities PAC endorsement or them about to throw their weight behind the Democratic nominee, which we knew they were going to do. But what's bigger than that is Joe Biden signaling that that's his preferred PAC is basically campaigning as usual, which is scary for me because the COVID times are not usual times. And also it just means that we're about to line the pockets of a lot of white consultants. They're about to get super rich. Joe Biden could have easily said nothing about which PAC he chooses to support or which is his preferred PAC, or he could have done something great and progressive, like say, hey, we need to also worry about making sure that other organizations, all the many black efforts that are on brown efforts that are trying to turn out voters that are actually doing the work are properly funded. But no, he signaled to the Democratic donors by saying that Priorities PAC is his preferred PAC to say, hey, this is where all your resources need to go once you max out to my campaign in the primary, and then do it again in the general election, then send that money back to priorities. So the problem with that is we are guaranteed to have a campaign that looks just like Hillary Clinton's campaign and Barack Obama's campaign. And what that does for me, it breaks my heart because it tells me that the idea of expanding the electorate has just went out the window, especially as it pertains to black and brown communities.
Right, Jason, first, Mondale, you're on point. There's nothing else to be said about that. The only thing I would like to do is actually explain what white consultants mean to our viewers, right? Because Mondale just mentioned a very good point. What's a white consultant and what's a black consultant? Well, a black
I know the answer to that.
Go ahead.
Look, I'm being halfway facetious. Here's the thing. Consulting, like any other business, is a reflection of not only a particular set of skills, but a set of personal connections and personal and cultural competencies as well. And what we've seen repeatedly over the last 20 to 25 years in American elections is that the consulting class has primarily remained in the hands of middle-aged white guys who made their bones with Bill Clinton. I mean, like, it is shocking the number of people who established themselves at the top of the pile of the consulting class based on work that they did 20 to 25 years ago. And some of their proteges have now spun off on their own. But the fact of the matter is, we are speaking increasingly to a diverse, and not just diverse in the cute black, brown, red and yellow, black and white, they are precious in the sight, Jesus loves the little children of the world kind of diversity. We're talking about the diversity of class. We're talking about there's a different way that you have to campaign to a 32-year-old single white mother with a biracial child who just got back after a year in Iraq. Okay, you can't campaign to that woman the way you can to any white woman in America. You can't campaign to a 45-year-old black man who did 2 years in jail. It's never allowed him to get a great job, but he owns a pickup truck business. there is an economic and class diversity in the American population today that many of the consultant class, who are mostly older white guys, do not get, do not recognize, and do not account for, which is why we've had 2-3 different election cycles where people were spending time trying to go after never Trumpers, where they were spending time trying to go after a working class white male vote and ignoring the fact that you've got hundreds of thousands of working class Latinos, Asians, and African Americans in Michigan and Youngstown and Cleveland and Columbus and everything else like that, because they think voting operates in terms of talking to people who look like them. So that's the damage of that consulting class. And increasingly, if money is not spent with African American women, African American men, people in the AAPI community, and Latino consultants, not to say that those consultants can only work with their particular ethnic group, but also because no one has talked to those particular ethnic groups. No one has talked consistently to those racial groups. No one has long-term background in those particular communities. So that is what we're seeing is the difference between diversifying consultants. I mean, you look at what happened in 2018 in Georgia. To a certain extent, you kind of look at what happened in Florida. When you employ a consultant class that actually looks like the population of people that you're trying to campaign to, you tend to do better. When you fly in your consultant class from Chicago or New York or DC and tell them, all right, I need you to spend 6 weeks learning about this particular population in Southern Louisiana, you're going to lose money. And you're going to lose money.
I have a question for you. I have a question for you specifically.
Oh my.
So, do you think the Biden campaign has enough or will have enough Black consultants?
So, Jason, don't forget what you said when you got a question from, when we took a question from, on episode 1, we took a question from the Stack channel, and someone asked a question that they knew the answer for. Be sure to tell Marcus what type of question he's asking right now.
No,
finish, Marcus.
Hey, stop hemming and hawing me, Mondale. Every time I talk, you talk. How come every time I'm in the refrigerator, you in the refrigerator? In the refrigerator.
I have no idea
all
what
the
that
hog
means.
maul, all the collard greens,
Stay
all the
focused, Marcus.
chitlins.
Marcus,
So my question is very
Marcus,
simple.
I've got like 3 minutes. You got to hit me with
So my
the
question is very simple to you. Do you think that the Biden campaign has enough space and operational fortitude and operational integrity to hire enough Black consultants to do what they need to do in the general election?
I'm going to get a bell, and I'm going to ring that bell whenever I hear a bad faith question. And I will be ringing that bell right now, because this is the quintessence. Thank you, Mondale, for giving it. This is what would be a bad faith question. Marcus, you know the answer to that, and you know my answer to that. No, the answer is no. It doesn't mean that Joe Biden can't win, but I certainly don't think that enough resources are spent on African-American men and women who are in the room, not on television, not speaking to journalists, not in South Carolina. African-American men and women who are in the room developing strategy. No, I don't think the Biden campaign has enough African-Americans. And yes, there are some people who are there, and there's some people who are in that room occasionally. But again, the consultant class tends to be very cliquish, like a lot of other classes of professionals, like Fortune 500 boardrooms, like Hollywood studios. And when you have that, you miss out on important conversations and important strategies that need to be made. Does that mean that Joe Biden can't win? No. Does that mean that Joe Biden can't change? No. Does that mean that other campaigns won't influence him? No. But it does mean, which is a topic that we'll get to at a later point, because I'm going to have to hop off soon. It does mean, though, that down ballot candidates who know that their success may depend on how Joe Biden does need to be knocking on the doors, texting, tweeting, and calling his campaign and saying, look, Vice President, nominee, you ain't got anybody in your campaign that can come to my district and help.
So listen, I'm going to tell you guys right now, be prepared. And we're recording this call like we always do. Be prepared, hold me accountable. I bet you we have so many down ballot races that outperform top of the ticket this cycle.
I completely agree.
So I don't even think, people candidates shouldn't count on the top of the ticket, you know, but for the normal people to turn out for presidential elections. I think there are going to be so many other races so important: district attorney, judge, you know, all of these races, sheriff elections and mayors, and also like state reps this cycle. Thank God we have so many state legislators that are electing their elected officials this cycle. That's because that's how the Democratic Party will be buoyed, because the top of the ticket is already making missteps, and this, you know, this signaling to the priorities or to the donor class that priorities is where the money needs to go is the first misstep, but it's not the only one. It's also carry over into the topic about how the Democratic Party itself is spending its resources and what it's doing. They just launched this effort called Chop It Up, which is basically a barbershop talk. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, now hold it right there. So I just want to let the audience know, because I'm in my COVID car, I gotta jump out. But I want to thank you guys very much, as per the usual. Please shoot your questions, because we'll be able to have conversations about those questions later. You can always tweet me at @DrJasonJohnson on Twitter. I also have a new piece up with the Griot. Marcus has a new piece coming up with the Griot soon. We should probably get Mondale writing at the Griot too as well. That might be a good idea. But anyway, thank you guys so very much. I got to put my mask on like Future and make sure that I'm safe. Check y'all later.
Thanks for joining us,
Jason. Marcus, so chop it up, bro. So the DNC launched an event, an effort. It's an effort that's part of their auxiliary, the Black Caucus, the DNC, the National Party, called Chop It Up, supposedly targeting Black men. The thing about that, though, is the lack of specificity in just how they were targeting Black men, and let's be honest, the language didn't even say, it just said like a barbershop conversation for our communities, or how we benefit our communities. That's right. And then like the point of contact wasn't a Black man. And then like the pictures from one of the events had some brothers and some sisters sitting in the barbershop. I'm assuming the owner of the shop was in there, and Tom Perez talking at these people. This is not, so they said the whole genesis of Chop It Up is to, one, create a space where Black men, where they're intentionally understanding to Black men, and then also build a platform where they can begin to build a platform based on Black men's interests, needs, and likes, right? The problem with that is, and let me explain, because I criticize the Democratic Party so much for not giving resources to Black men. My problem with that is the barbershop is not a casual location for Black men. So for the Democratic Party to believe that they can begin their work with the Black men or Black man in this country at the barbershop, a place that took 160 years to build its legacy and respect in our community and become a quintessential space of safeness for Black men, right? Or safety for Black men, to believe that you can begin there is a step towards white supremacy and white privilege. You have so much, you being the Democratic Party has so much work to do that is not your beginning. That is not the stepping stone. That is the pinnacle of, that is a space that should be reserved for people who have been putting in work in our communities for so long. And it shows them just trying to leapfrog so many steps. And I know it's going to be a transactional relationship. So what they're doing is burning these brothers' respect and name and reputation, because on their website or whatever they sent out flyer, they said their main goal is to turn out more Black men in the election of 2020. Well, if your main goal is to turn out elections, then that tells me that your main goal is not to benefit Black men, not to worry about what Black men's needs are, not to worry about what Black men need to be seen as whole citizens in this country. So that to me is transactional, and it's the problem that I have with the Democratic Party, thinking that they have the girth to begin in barbershops and have conversations and ruin these brothers' names and legacy, because what's going to happen is the conversation after November, when the Democratic Party is no longer chopping it up, is people going to be saying to these barbers, where your party at now, right? Where they at now? December, where they at?
All their integrity.
They
lost all their integrity.
So, but the thing about it though is, as a brother who runs a shop, a barbershop, you don't turn down those type of efforts to bring, attention to your barbershop, because you may get more clients, right? And that's essential, not just to the person who owns that shop, it's also essential to the barber who just started out, who needs new clientele, right? So the problem does not lie with the brother who allowed them to come into his shop, the proverbial shop, because it may be a sister that owned that shop. The problem lies with the Democratic Party not even doing the work to know that that's not how you begin relationship in a space that's so sacred, right? Barbershops used to be ran by enslaved Black people. People don't even know that. In the beginning of the 19th century, when Black people were first starting to cut hair, it wasn't Black people getting haircuts, but it was Black people cutting hair. They were cutting hair of white slave owners and business owners. And then it took a while before it became a safe space for us. So for them to just come there is disgusting to me.
So my question is about their whole effort. First off, beautifully stated placement of where the Black barbershop lays in the Black community, especially with African-American men and Black men. Like I'm wolfing right now, right? I'm wolfing, meaning that my hair is overgrown, right? And I'm afraid to even take my clippers and put it to my head for two reasons. Number one, I'm not good, but number two, I don't have a healthy conversation going on around me while I'm cutting my hair, because that's the only way that I feel comfortable. Now, follow what I'm saying. Do you think the Democratic Party, and if they did, kudos to them, but do you think the Democratic Party spent the $1,800,000 that's going to take to actually have that conversation with nuance?
No.
To have that conversation with the understanding? Answer that for me.
So I don't think they did, but beyond spending and that's a great question, because we're talking about resources, and that's how we win votes, if that's their main goal, right? I think it was a thrown together thing, like chop it up. This is something brothers might say, you know what I'm saying? But it also seems scripted. It seemed too scripted to me, because I'll never say to Marcus, yo, let's chop it up. Not in the form where I'm going to create something. And it was, to me, it's problematic for so many reasons, but mainly because it seems like exploitation of the work. I know somebody who did spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on an effort for Black men. Me, Negro, and I'm just gonna leave it at that. You know what I'm saying? My entire savings is gone for an effort. And that was a selfless plug in a way, but it's also to say that for them to believe that not just me by myself, because there's other brothers who are organizing brothers, John Taylor III, you know what I'm saying? You, Chris Smith, there's tons of brothers that are trying to organize brothers around what we need to do. And what I am saying though is for them to believe that they're gonna create a space for us to talk about our interests or build a platform for Black men, you already discount the amount of work that has already been put in to create that platform. All the conversations that Terrence and his consultancy group is doing to find out and to store and then dive in and look at the amount of data that's necessary to run a program that is central, that speaks to Black men. They're not doing that. And I can tell you how I know. So the barbershop is a safe space in one condition. And this is no disrespect to anybody, but Black men talk differently when anybody that's not a Black man is in that space. So for Tom Perez to be at the front, you're already telling me that Black men aren't talking. And you invited a bunch of committee people, you invited a bunch of Democratic folk to the conversation. So you're already swaying what's being said and also who's saying it. You brought a bunch of people that speak your language to this barbershop. That's not authentic, right? That's not authentic. That's not organic.
Who are the white politicians that could possibly come into a Black barbershop anywhere in America and automatically get a pass?
None.
Matter of fact,
None.
Zero, right? Okay.
Zero. Let's
go deeper than that.
Go ahead.
Who are the white musicians that
listen, you're trying to get to the Eminem question.
Yeah, no. I was thinking Paul Wall, maybe. John.
No, but this is what I'm saying. Even I say none, not in a joking way. There's always gonna be when that white person leaves, some brother in that room is gonna say, man, there was a politician been a politician and I don't got no trust behind it. Somebody gonna be like, nah, man, he really care about the community, but the majority of folk in there gonna feel the same way about this guy just politicking. And
create the addition. So even more than like the majority of everybody in the barbershop feeling the same way, here's the plug for hiring Black men. Here's where my plug is, and I'll do this. The plug is simple. There's an organic understanding from Black men. If you try to start a Black male outreach program and you decide to hire everybody else besides a Black male, then you are already starting off in the wrong place, right?
For their credit, in their defense, and I'm not really big on defending the Democratic Party, in their defense, there's a brother that's leading the effort. I will say this though, Yeah, it's a brother leading the effort. But the thing about it is, black men need a liaison that is focused on black men and black men solely, because the hurt and distrust that exists, rightfully so, with us as a demographic for the party, you can't overcome it in a cycle. Secondly, you can't overcome it part-time.
Is
So
it fair to call you a Democratic operative?
Absolutely not.
Okay, is it fair
to call me a black operative?
All right, follow me. Is it fair to call you a black operative that prefers Democrats?
I think yes, and I'll tell you why. Because I don't play this game about I'm gonna vote for Republican and teach Democrat lessons. The Republican Party is a racist party, and it's not just because of Trump. It's because of their policies, the issues they support, what they do at state level, what they do at the local level is racist across the board. So yes, so call me a Democratic operative. I'm okay with that, simply for that reason, because the Republican has nothing to offer black community. They're not doing anything. If you want black people to vote for Republicans, tell Republicans to stop passing laws to restrict my enfranchisement. Stop passing laws to lock me up more. Stop sitting in meetings with the Koch brothers and Alec saying that, oh yeah, we can build a jail because we'll fill it up. We'll just arrest more people.
What's the conference's name? What's the conference name? The Alec, is it Alec Conference?
That's Alec, yeah. Right. It's Alec is American Legislative Executive Council. Basically what they are, who they are, is a bunch of rich business folk who get together with state level elected officials, and the business right legislation that's beneficial to them and pass that legislation on to those officials, and then they go back to their state and introduce these laws. They're responsible for stuff like. Go ahead.
That's where the draconian voter registration laws come from. That's where the abortion laws come from. I want people
created by the Koch brothers. Just say that.
Yeah, I want people watching this to understand that if you see something that happens in Florida or Georgia or Arizona, and then all of a sudden the same exact law gets written in your state, that's because they are organized about the treachery that they're trying to do against communities, trying to do against women's rights, trying to do against African-American freedom. They are organized in putting laws and placing laws in state legislatures across the country. And FYI, whatever Trump says has almost zero as much credit and power as what your state representative says and what comes out of the state house. Because what comes out of state house, Trump could give your state $20 billion. And the state house can say the people only get $1 billion. So this is a very important point that I want to bring up to people, because I think people kind of disregard where these crazy laws come from. The reason why Stacey Abrams and other leaders across the country are fighting for voter rights, it's not necessarily the federal government at all points. It's the folks that you come and you look at in them state houses. Real quick question, man, and I want you to answer this. Vice President, who you got?
Well, I mean, here's the thing. I don't. For me, the likely pick, of course, is Stacey Abrams, right? But my thing is, here's my thing. Stacey Abrams already said that she's open to that idea and she would serve, honorably, and she would. My thing though is here's my thing. Bigger than like, I mean, if we are trying to, point out the flaws in how we play politics and what it looks like in this country, I'm not really willing to make that election, the national election, the presidential election, the sexiest election on the ballot right now. So I don't really talk about it in that context. For me, it's more important if we're talking about, mayors who hire police chiefs, right? DAs who are going to charge or overcharge somebody or not charge. So like for me, those are important things to me. So I hear where you're coming from and how people want to talk about presidential election because it's that year. But you, Marcus, know, just like I know that, it's so many candidates, it's so many elections that are so much more important to the daily lives of people than the president. And this is not to say that Donald Trump isn't responsible for a lot of evil and also hurt, but I'm also telling people that you're not going to motivate an extra amount of black people to go to the polls, especially not black men, using Donald Trump as a fearmonger or the three-headed dragon.
Hence me wanting to go ahead and bring up Jamie Harrison. in South Carolina who's running against Lindsey Graham. A black man is running against Lindsey Graham. I'm not going to go into all the things that Lindsey Graham has done. If you're watching the show, you might know exactly who he is. He's a U.S. Senator from South Carolina. He has done a tremendous amount of harm to this, to our country and to everybody who's not rich, right? I want to give Jamie a specific shout out right now. I want to also give, again, like I did last show, Angie Nixon. And if you go on my Facebook page, you'll see a lot more people who are running. So with you saying what you just said about local elections, I want you to take a minute to tell me about a candidate that's local that folks should take a look at.
Athens Clark, in Athens Clark, Georgia, we have a brother named John Williams running for sheriff. And that's all I need to say. Please go to John Williams' site, donate. If you're in Georgia, please volunteer. Or actually, if anyone in this country, right now we're in COVID time, anybody can hop on the phone and text somebody or text 1,000 somebody for the campaign. That brother is progressive. He's running against a horrible sheriff right now who's actually taking money, large sums of money. His largest donors, his opponent's largest donors is the bail bondsmen organizations that participate, in that county. So that type of stuff is happening in Athens, Georgia, and John is trying to put an end to it. And they're putting so much money behind the incumbent because John is talking about ending cash bail. So this is why we need to support candidates like that. Beyond that, I also want to just point out the fact. I mean, Summer Lee's on the ballot again, so that's a thing in PA. But I also beyond candidates and personalities. Issues, man. We need to be talking to Black people about issues. People think that like, oh, Donald Trump wrote a check, his signature's on it, people gonna vote for Trump. That ain't gonna happen in a way that we can't stop, and we can stop it by telling the truth. Jason was naming. That's
me. That's me. I've said that.
But Jason was naming his brother he met in Massachusetts, who was telling him all this stuff that is absolutely incorrect. If you're a small business owner, Republican administrations aren't better for you. This is a narrative that exists, but in actuality, that's not what happens in this country. Small businesses, business in general, do better under Democratic presidents.
You know what I'm concerned with when you say that right there, so Joe Biden is our nominee, and I know we don't like talking about Joe Biden, right? But when you say what you just said right there, I'm gonna give you my two major issues in life, and that is criminal justice reform and reparations. I'll be very blatant about that. Healthcare, very close third, right?
It's funny you brought up reparations, but go ahead.
Yes, goddamn.
Go ahead.
Yes. So when it comes down to it, here's my question. Well, here's my statement. We are going to spend the next 4 months from now, for how many months from now until November, thinking about and talking about and consistently breathing and believing that Black issues, they won't be brought to the forefront.
I hate the name of this show, Clickbaity, right?
Right.
That's why we named the show that.
That's right. They won't be brought to the forefront. So when it comes down to criminal justice reform, you have a president who is running Super Bowl commercials that have criminal justice reform topics on them, and we have a Democratic presidential candidate who won't apologize for the crime bill and has really shown no kind of remorse. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't vote for Joe Biden, because I'll be voting for Joe Biden also, because I think he's a valid alternative to Trump. But how do these down ballot races be able to turn out voters about issues when the top of the ticket doesn't talk about anything?
So there's definitely a connection between the top of the ticket and other candidates. We know that. But what I'm telling you is a properly ran campaign will not feel the effects of a sloppy run top of the ticket campaign. So if you're doing what you need to do and talking to the voters you need to do, and in a way, and by talking to the voters you need to be talking about expanding the electorate and not trying to expand it with conservative leaning voters. You need to be talking to the base, i.e. Black voters who always vote for Democrats.
Right.
So if you're not reaching out, if you live in a district that isn't somewhere in middle America and Black people, you need to be talking about 27% usually white people maxing out on Black voters and then getting, significant portion of brown voters. If you're not doing that, if your campaign plan doesn't look like that and you live in a diverse district, then your consultant needs to be fired. They're probably not a Black consultant, but they need to be fired, and then you need to start over. But I listen.
Fire the consultants.
Right. The more time we spend on talking about Joe Biden's shortcomings and faults, and they need to be debated, but we have tons of time to talk about that. Not us per se, but like debate stages and whatever that's going to look like in a general election. What we need to be doing is trying to combat how priorities is going to spend their money on down ballot races and who they're going to spend that money on and who else and what other donors aren't going to fund these local elections because they don't see value in them.
And with that being said, I'm gonna go up to our last topic.
Code switching the podcast.
You think priorities is going to spend money on small businesses that are African American? And with that also being said, as being a small business owner 3 times over, and also you are a small business owner a couple of times right? The government ran out of money.
Government didn't run out of money.
Association ran out of money to give small businesses a lot more than are currently funded. And we talked on a text message earlier. You put your application in on time. I put my application in on time. We haven't even heard anything back. So I'm even concerned about African American people being able to get their small business loans.
So
what's up with that?
So what Marcus is talking about is the money that was set aside, the billions of dollars that was set aside for payroll protection program in COVID times. I don't know if people saw that or not, but the SBA said that program is out of money. This to me is all about priorities. This federal government is never out of money. They just print what they want to print. And you know, they're not talking about this in context of like these Forbes 500 companies not getting their money or airlines not getting their money. This is all about priorities and how we choose to spend money and how we set up programs. This along with how, you know, this debacle around this $1,200 is being sent to people. All of that shows that this country does not value struggling, poor, and working class folk. If you're not the top 1% and you can't hire lobbyists to go call Donald Trump or go to the Senate or the House of Congress, then you probably aren't being taken care of by your government and the government that you fund. So we have a president who believes that the stockpile is for the federal government, not for the states. And I don't know what the federal government is without the states, but so I mean, you know, that level of misunderstanding is at the top of the ticket and also in charge of all of these issues. I did want to say though,
Mondale, before you say that, can I say that my cousin just texted me and he was like, I just got my $1,200 and re-up.
If I say that again,
I just got my $1,200 and I re-up.
Yeah. So
he said.
So just leave that at that, because I mean, like, that's dope. I mean, I'm glad everybody who got their money got their money. What I am saying though is the idea that we are comfortable sending people $1,200 when that's not enough to, you know, pay most people's rent. It is extremely dangerous. I think the conversation is lacking in a serious way. And it also tells me we don't have enough progressives, even though people say they are progressive. We don't have enough progressives in positions of power.
Not only progressives, but having politicians in general that have the foresight to even take care of their wealthier, consistent voters that might be Republican. Like the Republican Party should have known better than accepting a deal for the multiple poor folks that vote for Republicans every single year, saying to them that you're going to get $1,200 one time. Congress is actually going to have to get back to work. And listen, and I believe they're supposed to reconvene.
But the Republicans have a different dynamics on their hand. Like those that vote Republican have shown that does not matter like what happens, they're going to vote that way. And that's a lot of the time with the Democrats too. But I mean, if you think about the idea that Donald Trump can say that his power as president is total, is absolute, and then you start hearing Donald Trump said that in a COVID briefing to a reporter that the president power is total. That makes him a dictator or a monarch, and he said that. So, but that's not the fear. We're used to Donald Trump saying silly stuff like that. The scary part is he had people defending him. People that play politics started defending him, saying that the president's power is total. So what I'm saying is Donald Trump has. This is about the Chris Cuomo thing. Like Chris Cuomo thing to me was so alarming, not because Chris told the truth, but it's because Chris Cuomo, who has a successful news show on CNN, said that, you know, he's not happy in his job and he's been considered successful because all he does is talk to Democrats who he don't believe will do what they say they're going to do, or that they believe what they're saying to him, or he talks to Republicans who are using talking points that have been forced to talk to from the fear of the wrath of Donald Trump. So he's also upset that he's considered successful in this space. My problem with that is black men have been the victim, black people have been the victim of the news, cable news forever, since it's been created in the 1980s, since Terry Turner created it, right? The thing about it, though, is we were screaming that and people said it was nothing. Now, white man Chris Cuomo said it, and it's going to become a headline. He's going to be a hero and probably launch a campaign off of it, right?
Let me go ahead and do one thing real quick. You're right about what you just said, but I do want to give Chris Cuomo and his wife and his family a shout out. Chris's wife just got COVID-19, and you can see the pain on his face. But you know, the difference between Chris and our families is that I'm pretty sure that Chris Cuomo's wife has some version of insurance. I'm pretty sure that Chris Cuomo's wife has and I pray she has a high success rate with getting over her virus. And
you shouting out Chris Cuomo is definitely. I'm conscious and I have a heart, so I feel for anybody who has COVID-19. But then I would say this in response: if we were to list the name of black people that are dying from this, we'll take the entire show.
But I haven't even gone into the people that I know personally,
right?
Which is a lot more than Chris Cuomo's wife, who I have no idea. Don't get this twisted, brother. This is a real conversation in my community, and I'm a part of my community. Like I'm here, and I've been here. So to have the conversation, the only thing I want to do is make sure that I shout my love out, and I'm gonna shout my love out because we don't do this to our own people, right? Hey, people, let's slow down a little bit. Let's figure out how we can take care of our families, and let's make sure that we keep washing our hands and doing all the things that's gonna keep us protected. In a couple of weeks, if not in Georgia, I know very soon, they're gonna lift bans. So today they lifted, the government decided they were gonna actually ease the restrictions of COVID-19 and make people allow people to start going outside. So I'm telling you right now, I personally don't think that that's what the black community needs right now. I personally think we need to sit on the same standards that we are right now. And I personally think we need to believe like that this virus is real and that there are a lot of more people that are asymptomatic than we could ever think of in general. So the
idea that Georgia is going to lift any restrictions right now when they just jumped from 10,000 a week ago to like nearly 16, 17,000 right now, whatever the number is at, is ridiculous. And it's also this idea that Donald Trump and other conservatives talking about if we don't open up the government, the economy is going to fail. If we open up this country, people will die. More so,
the economy has already failed. So
hold on, listen to me.
Even more so.
Someone said.
You just said about the economy failing.
Hold on a second. Someone said that opening up the government and letting people go back to school, these kids go back to school, they were saying that, there's a study showing that only 1% to 2% of kids are gonna die if they go back to school. That type of thinking is beyond callous. So this is the administration and the people that he's listening to. They're thinking that 1% to 2% of people's kids are disposable. Also, mind you, that these schools that we're probably talking about that are overpacked, that are crowded, that have people more exposed to folk are black people, because black children take advantage of public school system at a higher rate than anybody else. So this is you better be listening to these people telling you that your kids, at least 1% to 2% of your children are disposable to them, and it's worth getting the economy back going. I am telling you right now, I don't want to get into the arguments about if the economy's already failed or if it is going to fail. I know 16 million or 6 million or how many other million people lost their jobs. I hear that.
Conversation for African Americans.
I hear that.
Homeowners and to stop gentrification.
What I'm saying though is I don't ever want Marcus.
Have that conversation.
I don't want to have that conversation because
it's a both and.
Listen to me. It ain't a both and. What I'm saying is listen to me.
All the time, Negro.
You don't listen to me. Let me talk though. So what I'm saying though is, because what I'm saying is, you can't talk money to me and make me feel like life is, you can put a price on it. I don't care if the economy falls all the way into third world statue. And I know we don't use that language anymore, but if somebody's gonna die, if a percentage of the population is going to die because we're trying to get the economy rolling again, that to me is ridiculous. I don't care about money in the sense where I'm willing to jeopardize a percentage of Black lives, definitely not kids. So what I want to say to you guys is, I'm done yelling at Marcus for the night, not forever, just for the night.
This guy likes yelling at me.
Yeah, I want to thank all of you all for joining us this evening. It's been great. Clickbaity, Political Thirst Trap has nothing to do with us and everything to do with the Black community. We enjoy being in this space. We thank y'all for joining us. Please remember that we're back on Saturday, 8:30. Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturdays are our day. 8:30 is our time. Log in. Please share this video. Even if your people missed it, make sure they know that people are speaking from a Black perspective on a regular basis, and we're not funded by anybody that's a corporation. So peace, y'all. Have a wonderful evening. Once again, Marcus Farrell, Mondale Robinson, and Jason, all of us speaking on behalf of the Black community, not for the community, but on behalf of it. And we thank y'all so much. Peace.
Peace.
Trap squad, 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 trap squad. Hey, clickbaity political. Yeah, thirst trap, trap squad, squirrel squad. Our mission is critical to speak the truth to the masses. Yeah. We here for the fight. We ain't started, but we here to finish it. Sick and tired of seeing the privilege. Take advantage of the weak and the innocent. So we let a voice be heard. Every single weeknight. Unapologetic. Yeah. Black people, despite this white supremacist system that we live through on a daily, we still throwing up those acorns cause we represent clickbaity. Yeah. Trap squad, trap squad, trap squad. Let me hear ya. Trap squad, trap squad. Throw those squirrels up if you with it. Trap squad, trap squad. Yeah, I see you, yeah, I see you. Trap squad, trap squad. Trap squad, thirst trap. Trap squad, trap squad. Trap squad. Let me hear ya. Trap squad, trap squad. Throw those squirrels up if you with it. Trap squad, trap squad. Yeah, I see you, yeah, I see you. Trap squad, trap squad. Trap squad, thirst trap. Trap squad, trap squad, trap squad.
Hi, everybody. This is Jason Johnson along with Mondale Robinson.
What's going on, people? Mondale Robinson, founder of Black Male Voters Project. Thanks for joining us.
And Marcus Farrell.
Hey, how's everybody doing? Marcus Farrell, Marcus for America. Let's go.
I always call him Farrell because it makes more sense when he's wearing the hat. And I am Dr. Jason Johnson. We are here tonight for another wonderful episode of Clickbaity Political Thirst Trap. We're going to be talking about the exciting events that are going on in politics from the perspective of three Black dudes who happen to know a little something about politics. So we have a really, really, really packed show today because strangely, even though we're all quarantined and stuck in our homes, there's a lot of things that seem to be happening in the world. First off, we're going to start with this life of quarantine that we are all living. Even though the United States now leads the world in the number of coronavirus cases, the United States now leads the world in coronavirus deaths, you still have governors in places like Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina who have decided that they want to reopen their states, that social distancing doesn't matter, that the coronavirus is something that is an inconvenience, it's just a bad flu, and we shouldn't be worried about it. And so we have several states that as of this Friday and the following Monday will be opening their doors to specific businesses. In particular, on Friday, we have in the state of Georgia where Brian Kemp, who just as recently as 2 weeks ago didn't know that you could spread coronavirus when you're asymptomatic, said that we're now going to be opening up barbershops, nail salons, hair salons, massage parlors, and tattoo shops on Friday, to be followed on Monday by the opening of certain kinds of clubs and gyms. So we're going to start with Marcus, who's right there in the heart of Hotlanta. Marcus, what do you think about the fact that your governor apparently has a death wish for everybody in the state?
Elections matter. Elections matter. Elections matter. And also turnout matters, and also making sure that you have leadership that's competent and has a decent understanding of where we are in the world. Look, they opened up Tybee Island. They opened up businesses that.
Now, hold on, Marcus. Where is Tybee Island? For those of us who aren't local or aren't from the South, what is that?
It's the beach. Basically, it is in South Georgia, very close to Savannah.
Okay.
The businesses that this guy opened up. I mean, and I hate to put on my tinfoil theory hat, conspiracy theory hat, but
it's hidden underneath your velvet hat. No one's gonna see it. We're
no. You feel the smoothness?
good.
Hey, these are things that African Americans frequent, and considering that not only does it hurt my people, like this happens in my neighborhood. We have to make sure as African Americans and as people of Georgia in general that we stay inside the house. The viewpoint that I have is very, very simple. You know you don't have enough hospital space. You know you don't have the proper capacity at public hospitals already. You know you don't have enough masks in general. And you know you don't have, and the CDC right here in Atlanta, NIH right here in Atlanta, right? You know that and the scientists, I mean, to be honest with you, if Kemp cared about the people of Georgia, he could just literally take a 5-minute drive to the CDC and ask scientists himself, hey, should I be opening the states up? But it's not about science. It's about a political feasance and political opportunity. And to be honest with you, I think it's a political opportunity that's going to turn itself in the head. Last thing I want to say, if we decide to open up the state of Georgia and African Americans die, I think this might be an even bigger ploy besides the folks that are protesting not opening up the government. This might be a bigger ploy to even hurt the Black community even more. And that might be a dangerous assumption, but all the facts of our movements in the state of Georgia has said that.
So Marcus, I'm going to give you a little bit of pushback before we go to Mondale. So the pushback would be from some Republicans, including some supporters of Brian Kemp, possibly even supporters of the President of the United States, is they're saying, well, wait a minute. It's Black folk who are suffering the most from all these essential business shutdowns. It's Black folks whose barbershops are closed down, whose nail salons are closed down. So isn't Brian Kemp actually helping the Black community in Georgia by opening up these businesses?
For a person who didn't even know what asymptomatic meant 2 weeks ago, he doesn't even have the right or responsibility to make the life and death decision that is about to be made here in the state of Georgia. And to be honest with you, it's life or death. I'd much rather a healthy business owner who can start their business again, or who can literally possibly get one of the loans that are coming out to suffice themselves. If that happens, I would much rather have people who are alive, Black people who are living, instead of having businesses that are thriving, that are actively spreading COVID-19 across our communities. Come on, man. Look, if common sense were $1, then these guys would owe the IRS $200,000 at this point. I'm personally just sick of the thought process, and I do question, especially in a time where you're trying to make it harder for African Americans to vote, especially with the vote by mail restrictions that this state has done, right? And then you go ahead and you say you can't vote, but you can go to the store, you can get your hair cut, you can possibly catch COVID-19. Donald Trump said it already. When we vote by mail, it's harder for Republicans.
Okay, I get it. All right, Mondale. So in our sort of pre-production meeting, and that's right, everybody, we actually have pre-production meetings. This seems organic, but we actually have written everything out. This is all actually on cue card. So we heard our pre-production talk earlier today. You said something really interesting that I thought was particularly compelling, the idea that we gonna see basically what happens. So what's your thought about opening these states up, and in particular, what the impact might be on Black folk of all sort of socioeconomic levels, and how we may respond to governors in Florida and South Carolina and Georgia opening things up on Friday?
I do believe, well, let me start by saying it does not fall on me that today is, I mean, it's not light on me that today is Holocaust Remembrance Day. Hitler and the Nazis killed 6 million Jews and other folk who they deem not worthy of being in their space or occupying life. Thinking about southern states reopening nail shops and gyms and public spaces and deeming business essential seems to me like a continuation of the cold murdering of Black folks, because we know that Black people are affected at a higher rate than anyone by COVID-19. I also know that Black people make up low-wage workers that are considered essential. So some folk will argue that Black people are already out. What I think is the sad part is people take their lead from politicians, even if we don't believe they do. People are also growing weary of being in their houses. So I'm afraid that Black people will be in the streets once this government is open, and they will not be criminalized for being in the streets. And that, like Marcus said, will kill a lot of us. We already saw that Dr. Oz and other folk don't really care about our kids when they said you go back to public school, only about 2% of kids are going to die, as if that's a small number. 2 kids dying is a huge number. So I
One
believe
kid dying is the only number that matters to that child's parents.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I believe that, you know, not only Georgia but any state that's talking about reopening it, and I'm right now on my mind we have Georgia, Tennessee, and North Carolina that are talking about it, or South Carolina, I'm sorry, and none of these states are unaffected by COVID, right? Like all of these states have had deaths, and Georgia, almost 20,000 people have been, you know, infected with COVID or by COVID. So I'm a little bit nervous, especially when there's already a place marker that said when you get to this point, then you should be thinking about reopening your state. And none of these states are at that point. The tragedy of that is we see what's going to happen. People will violate social distancing laws or rules or norms once this is reopened. We saw that with the beaches that have reopened already this past weekend, where people were standing close, you know, hundreds of folks standing next to each other that they don't know, people that they don't know, breathing on them, coughing and everything else. So I'm a bit nervous about the loss of life that's about to happen because of this reopening.
So here's what's interesting. So prior to when we get the show together on Tuesdays, I'm in class. I'm teaching my students in a political reporting class at Morgan State University. And when you mentioned Florida, it's interesting. One of my students is from Florida. And she talked about, she's like, I have to defend my state. And she said, a lot of the videos of people just sort of crowding the beach, she's like, yes, you have some of the strange sort of MAGA people out there. But she said that in a lot of Florida, the park is the beach. She's like, it's not the same, she's like, as being up here in this part of the country and you know, other parts of the Midwest where you guys have separate parks. People go to the beach to work out, to sort of be outside. And she's like, so it's not as crazy in Florida as it might be, or as it might seem to you guys up here. And I thought that was really interesting because I was like, okay, I'm not from Florida. So so I'm curious about
this. It's interesting.
Yeah, I want to hit Marcus first and then back to Mondo, because Marcus, you are from Florida. What's your response to that? Because she seemed to suggest not that what DeSantis was doing was good, but that being able to go to the beach is, for some parts of Florida, roughly the equivalent of, say, here in Maryland, where they say you can still go to parks.
You know, the civil rights movement was started by people who have dedication, a whole community that had dedication to following one thing. We got to walk to work. Like, follow what I'm saying. Orlando, Florida, you got OBT. That's nowhere close to the beach. Southside.
What's OBT?
Orange Blossom Trail, where close to where Zora Neale Hurston is from, right? Mm-hmm. Southside Tallahassee, Florida, inner Jacksonville, Northside Jacksonville. Just because these cities are on the beach doesn't mean that, and trust me, we saw what happened in Pensacola. Pensacola is on the beach, but brothers and sisters decided to have a barbecue anyway that turns up crazy, right? So I kind of got to push back on your student thought process. To be quite honest with you, yes, we do go to the beach, but we also have to have a mentality that's a little bit more protective of understanding exactly what's going on. That's no excuse. Black leadership in local cities and local places, they need to make sure that they're talking to the parishioners. They get on Facebook. These elected officials like Bobby Powell down there in South Florida need to do their live streams and be like, stay inside the house no matter what DeSantis decides to say. So, I mean, in my mindset is very simple, right? We have to make sure that we take care of ourselves, because it's obvious that the state government and the federal government is not trying to take care of us right now.
Yeah. So here's what I would say. I hear the idea that, you know, I'm not even against people going to the beach if they're using it for, you know, exercise and or whatever the purpose they choose. I am against people not respecting the need to social distance. Right. This is. And I hear these people, you know, at these protests screaming that if you think you're going to get sick, then stay at home. It's not about that. It's about what you're going to do to a community or people that are following the rules that will be affected by your your negligence. I like Marcus, I want to push back because while I'm not from Florida, I've spent 3 or 4 election cycles down there. So years at a time I've been in Florida. And I know that Florida has over 192 state parks. So the idea that there are no parks in Florida is not only a misnomer, there are parks in every city in Florida, not just the major ones, in the rural ones as well. So the need to be at the beach is one thing. I think people love being around water and fire. I get it. They're both common aspects of our lives. However, death at the expense of death, I don't understand it at all. And I think it's dangerous when we have elected officials playing this role, political role, in inciting people, even to these, like, the protests that are happening. People being excited by elected officials is dangerous.
It's a trap.
So
It's a trap.
It's always a trap. So Mondale sort of brings something up that kind of moves us to our second topic. And I think it's really, really, really key in the midst of all this is that we have seen protests pop up around the country of individuals fighting against governors, fighting against city halls, fighting against the sort of necessary shutdown of coronavirus businesses. Many of these protests are majority white. You see Trump signs. You see people dressed in camouflage. You see people carrying AK-47s, and they're demanding and insisting that the nation be opened back up and that this is no longer a public health issue, but is an issue of liberty. So a couple of things to this that I think are key. Number one, it's been shown, and we'll all be talking about this further down the line, it's been shown that a lot of these are not actual grassroots protests. They're AstroTurf, being funded by right-wing organizations that were already in existence and on the ground. Number two, they fly in the face of what the actual polling on the ground says, where even amongst whites, Republicans, conservatives, still the majority of the country is in favor of social distancing and the shutting down of certain businesses for public health and safety issues. So what you have necessarily is not people who are representing what the public wants, but they're being treated that way and they're getting that kind of coverage. So I want to start with Mondale. First, Mondale, what do you think about the fact that there's been research and journalists have shown that these organizations are actually being funded by some very, very mysterious and problematic elements of American society, as opposed to just being grassroots individuals who really want to get back to Chipotle?
Jason and Marcus, y'all let me nerd out real quick. And I hope our viewers will follow me down this track, because I am a go ahead.
I'm saying
seriously. I mean, but I mean, like that was a great joke, but like in all aspects of what's going on right now with these protests, Marcus, you could be you. Like, stop with the shit stuff. Stop with the stuff. What I'm saying though is, let's go back to the 70s and the 60s when there were leaderless movements that popped all up. Those movements were right-wing, conservative, racist KKK movements. And the reason they had leaderless movements were because no one could take blame or would be charged for all of the shenanigans that took place. These movements, these so-called protests, are using that same model where they're using leaderless movements to claim that these are organic, homegrown protests, when in actuality, these are people being flamed and being pushed and poked, not only by other online organizations, but our president telling people to liberate themselves. And the places he wanted them to liberate are states that he's worried about losing in this coming election. And he's tying in Second Amendment rights, which explains how people are showing up AK-47s and then all types of weapons, including elected officials in Washington State, where we saw, Walsh and a couple other elected officials show up, and one of them even having a gun. So, I mean, we know what's being said, even though it's in the name of COVID. What I do find ironic, though, is I've seen some of the signs, because I'm a troll. I've seen some of them, and the signs, they're using signs like protect my body. This is you can't control my body. And I'm thinking, wait, where were you when sisters and women were screaming that about, reproduction rights? So you see these people hold up these signs talking about you can't control their bodies and how you're infringing on their rights. So I'm learning that people want government out their way when it's when it's against them, but when it's when it's for them, i.e. tax breaks for businesses, and also this case, government is a problem.
And I will add to that, part of why we're getting this kind of attention, and I want Marcus to sort of address this when you talk about it in general. Part of also why we're getting this sort of attention on these sort of nutcases is because they are getting coverage. Look, there are hundreds of thousands of local groups, activists, Black Lives Matter, people of color, LGBTQ community. There are tons of marches and protests that happen at City Hall every single week, and they don't get 24-hour news coverage. They don't get the Washington Post. They don't get the New York Times. They don't get networks spending tremendous amounts of money looking at them when they're, screaming about the lack of opening hospitals in rural parts of the country, when they're talking about their health care. But you consistently see this problem where when aggressive, provocative, white-run conservative organizations and movements decide that they want to make noise, suddenly it's just every news outlet flocks to it. Every news outlet flocks to them. I mean, whether it was the Tea Party, whether it was people screaming about Obamacare in town halls or this, they're all getting that attention. So, Marcus, number one, I want you to say, I would like to hear, what do you think about that? What do you think about the fact that these groups are getting this kind of coverage, even though there hasn't been a group of 200 people yet? It's been 50, 60, 70 folks, maybe max, showing up. But on top of that, what do you think this says about our current body politic, that armed majority white men can show up at state houses and threaten government officials and ain't nobody been arrested?
Ain't nobody been arrested. Hypocrisy and guns. That's what I have to say about it, right?
American way.
Yeah, American hypocrisy. All the brothers and sisters that I know that went to Ferguson and literally were protesting for life were called terrorists. Had the FBI following after them. Had negative press coverage. Meanwhile, these folks are showing up to these state capitals getting positive press coverage. And no one is calling them a terrorist, and it's all about liberty. And we were protesting death in our community, and they are trying to protest basically anti-death or more death in their community in a different way. So the hypocrisy is ridiculous. You look at the Panthers, Ronald Reagan changed whole laws.
Gun laws.
When black folks
Gun laws.
When black folks showed up to the Capitol with guns, right?
The Montford Act. He was the governor.
And if you notice something, I looked real hard. There's only one young sister that showed up, and she was obviously a baby and really didn't have a political viewpoint set up. That one black person that was out at any of the rallies that I saw. Basically, we can't get away with that. Second, can you shoot a virus? Can you really take a gun out and shoot a virus? Because to be honest with you, you got your guns out there, and the narrative just doesn't make sense. So you might shoot somebody who has the coronavirus, and then maybe it hits a cell, like I saw on my Facebook page earlier. But can you shoot a virus? So what's the point of the guns, right?
I'll tell you the point of the guns, Marcus. That's a great segment. We also need to remember that the Second Amendment was not for black people. Let's stop playing games and pretending that it was. The Second Amendment was part of the reaction to rich white people's reaction to the Bacon's Rebellion in Virginia, when they saw poor white people and poor black people banding together to say, listen, we will not be, no longer will be exploited. And they said, well, the way we do this is we'll give white people rights that black people can't have, i.e. you can get marriage, i.e. white people can own guns, black people can never own guns, but white people can never be.
White people can vote? White people can vote?
Well, and also that white people could become citizens of this country because they were Christians or their grandfathers were.
But here's the thing also, and I think this is sort of a through line between what both of you guys are saying. What it's saying is that the guns in and of themselves are not reflection. The guns in and of themselves aren't intimidating. The guns are a reflection of the fact that these people know that they will face no consequences for any other behavior that they get into. They're not going to shoot the cops. They're not going to pull those guns on anybody. They're carrying the guns just to show that they can. But just to show that we're not protected by our white skin. We're not just protected by our white privilege. That protection is actually stronger than this gun. Because I know this police officer won't shoot me because of the color of my skin. I know this police officer won't arrest me even when I push my face up against the window of a Republican governor in Ohio and threaten him. I know that my skin color will protect me from consequences, and the gun is really just a flex at this point. because we've yet to see these people outside of the folks at the Bundy Ranch actually use those guns against officials. It is just a power move, and a power move that says that our lives and how we want to live them are more important than anybody else in the country, certainly people of color.
Jason, you made the most important point about this statement with the guns, at least. They know that they're not going to pull their guns on anybody, but they also know that they're not going to get shot. Which probably should lead us to our next conversation, because our next conversation.
I have to spin on that, but continue.
Yeah, because our next conversation is about what Dr. Jason Johnson and I. Well, I'll let you continue because
But I mean, because before we get to that next conversation, I think we definitely need to. Jason, I want to hear your comment, but then I want to say something about like the guns and the flexing.
Go ahead, Mondo. Go ahead.
Yeah. So for me, the guns are part of the flexing, because I do believe that they will pull and use these guns. And sometimes it's a proverbial gun, right? In Charlottesville, it was a car, and someone died, right? Because someone was in a place or in the space that occupied or tried to stop whiteness from reaming and showing that it was superior in this country. White supremacy is 400 years and old in this country, right? So the idea that they won't use those guns and still be, justified, or someone would say, well, they have a First Amendment right to protest. You do have a First Amendment right to protest. However, you don't have a First Amendment right to kill people. And them people getting that close to folk that they don't know their status because we're not testing enough people, is death. It's death waiting to happen, especially in states where we know they're doing the lowest amount of testing, and also that we don't really know what's going on with COVID right now. So I push back on the idea that it's a protest versus a basically a model or a mode to kill more people, even just by interacting with folks.
I can say this.
I want to give a quick shout out. Very quick shout out. I need to say this. Those nurses in New York who stepped in front of the protesters that were coming to protest, I guess, the hospital, right? Shout out to them, right? Those guys not only work their complete hours of their shifts, they go outside before work, after work, and during lunch to stop some nonsense from happening. And hey, those guys are heroes times two. So shout out to those nurses. I don't know what hospital, but I want to give you a shout out.
Yeah, speaking of hospitals, I want to go back to where you at, Marcus, in Georgia, and call out Kemp for his shenanigans. Kemp said when he was talking about reopening the government that, oh, don't worry, because the hospitals in Georgia are prepared for more patients, which implies that he knows it's not time to open the government. And what's more cynical is he's lying. Yeah. We don't even know how many people in Georgia are affected because we're not testing enough people. And on top of that, you're telling people, just go ahead and do it and don't worry about it. We'll have a space for you. There's no hospital that's going to save vulnerable populations that are dying, i.e. Black people.
And I want to add to that, actually, a very compelling point. So here in Maryland, they said a big story about the fact that Governor Hogan, his wife, his wife is a South Korean immigrant. His wife helped negotiate the purchase of 400,000 coronavirus tests from South Korea that'll be arriving, but actually arrived, I think it was on Monday. And they were sort of talking about, this is great, this allows test people. Now, mind you, that's still not a lot of tests relative to the population of Maryland, relative to the population of Metro Baltimore. And we don't know where those tests are going to be distributed, which is the other part. But it just goes to show, again, that people who are out here screaming and protesting are working counter to what is, in fact, the most effective way to move forward, which is, look, you want to open things up? Get tested. The sooner and more tests we have, the easier it is to open things up, because then you can identify who's sick and say, you can't go to the mall, and you can because you don't have coronavirus. So it's all sort of backwards. But speaking of things that are backwards, I want to talk a little bit about what we've got going on in the presidential election, because believe it or not, we have a presidential election going on, despite the fact that most of the country is trapped inside their houses. We can't march and we can't protest, and there won't be any rallies, which has had a significant impact on the importance of some people in the political sphere. Won't say that. A lot of people right now, and I think this is in part a reflection of people sort of navel gazing at home. There's a lot of discussion right now about who Joe Biden should pick as his vice presidential nominee, right? Now, I want to make sure we're clear on the history about this, because I think there's a lot of confusion about things that Joe Biden has said, which is not surprising because Joe Biden can often be very confusing when he talks. Last year in August, Joe Biden said, I want to pick a woman of color for my VP. He said that in August, okay? Then he said that he would like to have a black woman on the Supreme Court. He said he would like to. He didn't say he would. In subsequent months, Biden has mentioned every single black person that you can think of who is not your mama or your auntie as a potential VP pick. Joe Biden,
maybe it's your mama or auntie, depending on who you are.
right, exactly. That is true. He has talked about Michelle Obama. He has talked about Stacey Abrams. He's probably talked about Lizzo. He's probably talked about every single black woman that he can think of. Joe Biden is literally the dude in the club talking about all the women he didn't get phone numbers from, right? But that's what he's been doing, talking about all these potential black women. Now, since the end of the primary, or really since the end of Super Tuesday, there's been more discussion about whether or not he should pick Amy Klobuchar, Elizabeth Warren, Gretchen Whitmer, who is the governor of Michigan, and all these other names have come out. And the key part about all of this, what we're going to talk about, is the real discussion in the black community between not just our assumption that Joe Biden's going to pick a black woman, but which black woman he should pick. Excuse me. Last week, I wrote an article that suggested that Joe Biden will very likely pick Kamala Harris, Senator Kamala Harris from California, to be his vice presidential pick. Marcus Farrell wrote an article also for the Griot saying Joe Biden better pick Stacey Abrams or he's going to lose. So we're going to start with that discussion. Mondale will be our voice of reason. He doesn't
lost already.
Because he did not write an article.
You didn't, Marcus. You didn't lose already. Just because if people go back,
Mondale will be our voice of reason. So because I'm a polite individual and I was raised right and I have some halfway decent home training, Marcus, what is your argument for why Joe Biden should pick Stacey Abrams? Then I will make my argument, and then we'll see what Mondale says. Take it away, Mondale.
Brother, you're not gonna angle on me. I just saw the clapback from the K-Hive. So let me go ahead and start this one right here real quick. First, Joe Biden needs to pick a black person and as his vice presidential candidate, and preferably a black woman. Now, let's start there. I prefer Stacey Abrams, and the reasons why I prefer Stacey Abrams is
your article is a little stronger than prefer, bro.
Oh no! Oh,
I believe it's a low-level threat, but that's
yeah,
just how I read it.
I will say I believe we're doomed. I do, and the reason why is this right here. Stacey Abrams is the person that has shown a high turnout for black people who are non-voters in the South. One of the only people in America who's ever done that. Stacey Abrams has shown that she understands voter protection. And as I said in my article, Donald Trump is going to cheat his way no matter what happens, especially with voter suppression. Donald Trump is going to cheat. You need somebody who's experienced with voting right now. People always talk about experience when it comes down to being an administrator, but what's more than being an administrator is actually getting the votes in to be an administrator. And the only way that you can become an administrator is if you protect the votes of black people, brown people across the country. And the only person that has actively done that during her campaign, because other candidates, there's no other candidate that went through the same process. Jason Johnson, you were there, you were watching the whole thing, you reported on it, and preferably, I would prefer somebody who has an understanding of voter protection and voter registration than I would someone who, and this is not anti-Kamala, so let me say that real quick once again.
It sounds a lot anti-Kamala to me. I don't know.
No, you gotta stop saying.
I'm just waiting for the K-Hive to come for you.
Check this out first. Again, if Kamala is the pick, I'm going to be the first one with the Kamala for VP shirt on, because I don't know if I can wear a Joe Biden for president shirt, but I can wear a Kamala for VP shirt. And I'll be more than happy to do that. And also, I want to clarify something to some of my friends who worked in South Carolina for Kamala Harris. I apologize. Because you guys called me and you guys said to me,
stop. Get back to your argument. Because Jason's going to apologize.
I want to make that public. And now the last thing about Stacey Abrams is this right here. She has a fully functional voter protection team that has conducted operations with Democratic parties across the nation already right now. So she's already in conversations about how to protect the vote in your state, especially in states that we know are swing states that didn't go for Hillary in 2016, but it should go for whoever Biden in 2020. That's my argument, and I'm gonna stick with it.
Jason, what say you, sir?
You know what's funny? None of this is going to matter because ain't nobody voting for Kamala Harris or Stacey Abrams. Part of this, and this is something I want to use as a precursor to my article, ain't nobody voting for the vice president. We spend too much time talking about the vice president. The vice president 9 times out of 10 is really something that usually harms a president more than anything else. Dan Quayle, Al Gore, even Sarah Palin, as popular and as exciting as Sarah Palin was, all the political science shows she really didn't move the needle that much. She just brought a lot of attention. She didn't change the vote. She didn't pull over angry Hillary Clinton voters. Nothing like that really happened. Your vice presidential pick doesn't really make that much of a difference. No one wants to hear that because we're all politically interested and engaged, but it doesn't make that much of a difference. The second thing is this. Joe Biden, and this is what I argued in my piece for the Griot, Joe Biden's going to pick a black woman. I don't really have any doubt that he's going to pick a black woman. And he's probably going to pick Harris. Now, why are you going to pick Kamala Harris? Well, easy. Number one, Senator Harris is infinitely qualified to be president. She's infinitely qualified to run this government. She would be more than capable of going through this entire administration with a fine-tooth comb and picking out and pulling out all of the various ways that Donald Trump has infected every single level of federal government with white nationalists, white supremacists, and incredibly incompetent judicial selections. Senator Harris is capable and very equipped to do all of those things. But here's the other thing, and this was kind of the main argument of my piece. Look, picking your vice president, it's like the biggest casting decision in the world, right? Joe Biden, I mean, he's not Steven Spielberg, okay? He's more Michael Mann than Michael Bay. He's not this gigantically creative and engaging person, okay? He is an institutionalist. So if he is an institutionalist, what can we hope for? Picking at least an institutionalist who has some progressive ideas about how things are going to run. Now, look, the world would be a better place if Joe Biden were a much more dynamic, creative, and forward-thinking politician. The kind of person who would pick Joanne Jenkins, who runs the AARP, a black woman who runs the AARP, or a Val Demings, or a Stacey Abrams. All of those women are infinitely qualified and would demonstrate that big structural change is coming. But I don't know about you. I've never seen that Joe Biden before. We're not going to get that Joe Biden. So given what Joe Biden usually is and given how he operates, our best hope is somebody like Senator Harris, because probably left to his own resources, Joe Biden might have done something lame and picked a glorified Tim Kaine like Amy Klobuchar. So I want people to understand, at the end of the day, I'll be happy with whoever it is Joe Biden picks, because ultimately people are going to be voting for Joe Biden. They're not going to be voting for his VP pick. But you have to understand who this man is. He's not the kind of guy who's going to be creative enough, dynamic enough, or daring enough to pick someone that's going to galvanize the country or the public. So the best that he's going to pick is probably going to be Senator Harris. And hey, I think she's overqualified for the job.
I think Senator Harris is qualified for the position. But you made it
overqualified.
Overqualified for the position. I think Stacey is also when it comes down to right now. You made 2 points, and I want to talk about those 2 points. In one statement, you say that the biggest casting decision of the presidential election is the vice presidential pick. And in the other line, you say that nobody's going to vote for the vice president. This is different times, brother. If Joe Biden hasn't said anything that's intriguing to non-super voters and the expanding electorate, then how on God's earth do you expect someone to vote for him? They can put a Stacey out front. Let me
ask you a question, Marcus. Before we go to Mondale, let me ask you a question.
Hold on, let me
ask you this. What does Joe Biden have that Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton don't?
Nothing.
Wrong. What does Joe Biden, ask you again, what does Joe Biden have that Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton don't?
What do they have, Jason?
White skin and being a man.
Okay, fine.
The numbers that we are seeing now. Now, none of this guarantees anything. But let us be abundantly clear. Joe Biden is currently polling with white voters, including non-educated white voters, at numbers that we have not seen since Bill Clinton. Now, does that guarantee he's going to win? No. Does that guarantee that Joe Biden is not going to be the subject of plenty of additional attacks and obvious cheating by Donald Trump? No. All of those things are going to happen. But as of right now, this guy's polling at about 42% of the white vote. That is incredible.
No, I had 2 points, Mondale, and I'm gonna finish my last point is very fast, very quick. You know this, political scientist, Dr. Jason Johnson. You know this. How many times in history, in American history, has people turned out to vote against someone? They need to vote for something. And to be quite honest with you, Jason, the vice president, the former vice president, I don't think he's going to be able to pull out the anti-Trump votes at a high level from the Obama coalition. And I'm talking about non-super voting people of color and black people, because I'm tired of saying people of color because I'm a black man. So it is what it is. As far as I'm concerned, if it's not a black woman, specifically Stacey, I'll take Kamala. But if it's not a black woman, then we are in trouble. And to be honest with you, I don't even think that they might not even have the nuance to stand with 2 white people against Trump and trying to, because they're going to cloud the room.
I'm telling you right now, and I'm not a gambling man. I don't like Vegas, and who knows when I'll ever be able to go again. I'm telling you right now, I think there's a snowball's chance in Jamaica that he doesn't pick somebody black. I think he's going to pick somebody black. I think he's probably going to end up picking Harris. I don't think he's going to pick the lady from Nevada. I don't think he's going to pick Warren. I don't think he's going to pick Klobuchar. He's going to pick a black woman. That's very likely going to be Senator Harris.
Jason, let me round this segment out, y'all. Let me offer something that both of you articles, and I don't know if there's any black man or black woman or person in general who cares about politics that have not read those articles. They definitely should pick them up, both of them, because they provide wonderful perspectives on where we are. And I'm so excited that we're 2020 talking about 2 overqualified black women to be vice president. So that to me is a victory in itself. But let me point out something real quick. A couple things that, because we are black men who love facts, and while people think we're loud and obnoxious at sometimes, depending on who you're asking about each of us. So let me point out one thing. Joe Biden in August of 2019 didn't say that he was going to pick a black woman. What he said was, I'll pick a black woman of color. He said, I'll pick a black person or a woman. That was his exact quote in South Carolina, is where he made the statement. I'll pick a black person or a woman for my VP. What I want to do is I want to bring us back to what is reality, right? We love federal politics, national politics, presidential elections, because we are nerds. We also are dancers with the truth. And we know that regardless of who he picked or him himself will not be able to motivate black folk that don't normally participate. So while I don't want people to believe that we think that the presidential election is the most important election to black people, it is an important election. However, we should always, make space for people to know that we're not saying that Joe Biden is powerful enough to turn out black voters, or any voters for that matter, other than white people, at a rate that's gonna make significant change in our community, in a point where we'll be better off. Secondly, I wanna say that it is extremely important that we remember that the purpose of the vice president in this era that we're living in now, where a vice president and a president are from the same party because they're a unified ticket, they run together, not like it used to be. The vice president role is to bring along their state. With that, keeping that in mind, that may be an argument against you, Jason, because California will be Democratic regardless, right?
Regardless.
So the benefit of picking a Stacey Abrams is what she brings from Georgia and who she brings with her from Georgia, mainly black voters. I will say this: I've seen other outlets push out information saying that if Joe Biden does not pick a black woman, then he'll lose a significant portion of black women. I think that is a historical and trash, and that's trash covering of a presidential election, because nothing supports that argument. That's just someone, whoever wrote that article, who edited that article, and who published that article, trying to make news. That is definitely the definition of clickbait. So that person, that editor and that outlet should be ashamed of themselves, especially since they are a Black outlet. I'll leave that at that. What I will say is you guys posted 2 thought-provoking articles, and I'm proud to be in space with you guys, and I'm glad you guys wrote those articles, because what they showed is that there's an argument for both of those sisters, and both of those arguments are valid, and they sit on strong foundations.
And I want to say this, because I'm glad that Mondale sort of made this point. I've seen it online. We've all seen it online. And I'm just going to weigh into this because I generally don't care. Look, I don't like any of this anti either one nonsense that I've seen online. This is not an either or, because guess what? Ain't none of us making a decision, right? None of us are making a decision. It's like screaming and yelling at The Voice or American Idol or something else like that. You ain't in the room. So when I go online and I see Marcus make the argument that Joe Biden should pick Stacey Abrams, and people are attacking Stacey Abrams. Oh my gosh, Stacey Abrams, she's campaigning for the job and everything else like that. Yo, let's leave that in the past. There's no reason to take down either of these Black women, both of whom would serve fantastically in the position. Okay. Further, and I want to make this abundantly clear, Stacey Abrams is not campaigning for the vice president job.
No, she's fighting voter suppression around this country.
And fighting voter suppression.
And passing out information that's necessary.
Now putting out programs to make sure that people get funding and checks when they don't get it from the federal government. So, and I think this is important history to specify here before we go to our final topics. Number one, last year, Stacey Abrams was asked if she wanted to get into the 2020 race. And she's like, you don't get into the race to run for second place. Translation, I'm not getting in if I don't think I can win. That's not running for vice president. And every single time since, she's been subsequently asked, hey, how do you feel about this? Would you like to be vice president? There's nothing wrong with that. That's not campaigning. In the same way that Senator Harris, people are attacking her. Oh, Senator Harris, she's not this, she's not that. Look, the woman is qualified. She has done great work in the Senate. She has shown herself to be more than capable of running a functional political campaign. By the way, you know, not only did she run a pretty functional political campaign.
The front runner at that point.
I'm sorry?
She was the front runner at a time.
Yeah, she was the front runner at one point. So let's not forget, you know, how important that is when she was actually sort of in the race one way or another. And since dropping out of the race, this woman has put out policy after policy after policy after policy to be beneficial to this country. So I don't think this needs to be an either or. And I have told people on my timeline at Dr. Jason Johnson, I will not accept any Stacey Abrams or Senator Harris slander, because I think they're both perfectly qualified for the job.
I think it's also one other point. Marcus made a wonderful point about like the role of a VP and the purpose of a VP in our earlier section pre us going live. And I think that point shouldn't be missed, because what I want to say is that Joe Biden was a vice president. So I think a vice president for Joe Biden will mean more. He know the power that his president gave him, and what that allowed. It gave us ACA, right? Joe Biden's relationship is the reason ACA passed. And all of its flaws or glory, whatever you want to talk about the ACA, it exists partially because of Joe Biden's relationships on the Hill. So Joe Biden recognized that a senator, this is an argument for Kamala Harris, a senator and also a vice president, has a role to play in his administration. So I'll leave it at that. To round it out, I will say, yes, let's move on. But I will say this, Jason, you did say one thing that was like funny to me in my soul, and it was that Joe Biden is polling well with white people. I will remind you, sir, and you know this, a man of facts and statistics. Democrats, everyone, the white vote in our lifetime. So at a national level, that poll ain't gonna mean nothing come general election time, because he's not gonna win the majority of the white voters.
All you got to do if you're a Democrat running nationally is get 40% or above of the white vote, and you could. I mean, if Joe Biden got Barack Obama numbers in 2008, if he got 42% of the white vote, it darn near be a blowout. But here's the thing, though. Here's what I was trying to tell you: don't lean on that, because you not only do you need 42% of the Barack Obama numbers of white people, and high turnout. We don't know that. High turnout, because what happens is, what people need to remember is demographic shifts show us that you can get as many white voters as you want to, because Mitt Romney got more white voters
than Ronald Reagan, who won for almost every state in this country. But Mitt Romney still lost by a landslide to Barack Obama because demographic shifts. And right now we have two generations that are not, as white as those generations were back then.
Joe Biden might not win without black voters.
And we know. I want to hit on something though, and this is really key. When we were talking about this idea, and I was mentioning this idea of Stacey Abrams, and the idea that Stacey Abrams is constantly being asked, right? Wherever she goes, people are asking her, what do you feel about being vice president? Would you like to be vice president? Would you like to be vice president? And that strikes me as interesting based on something that we all took time to watch on Sunday night, which is we watched The Last Dance by Michael Jordan. And the idea
Chicago Bulls, man.
Whatever. Chicago Bulls.
Oh, man.
The point being, when you are trying to achieve an amazing goal, right? And you know that's what you want, but you have to be focused on the day-to-day challenge. You got to be focused on the next game in front of you, the next primary in front of you. People are always going to ask you, is this what you want? Is this what you want? Is this what you want? And you have to be careful about it, right? Like, yes, we won a championship. Yes, Stacey Abrams would like to be VP, but there's 20 different things that she's got to do before then. There's 20 different things that Jordan had to do before then. So what I want to sort of hit on here is we all had like different feelings and perspectives about this. One, some of us who like sports, some of us who didn't care that much for sports. Two, some of us who felt some kind of way about Michael Jordan. I just want to get first impressions, just first impressions. You don't have to go into detail because I'm going to hit the details. What was the biggest takeaway from the first two episodes of The Last Dance that you saw, Marcus? We'll start with Marcus, then we'll go to Monday. What's the biggest takeaway that you got from it? The thing that was making you say, no, the thing that had you texting me.
Pippen didn't get paid. Scottie Pippen, literally the best number 2 man in the history of sports, was getting paid $18 million for 7 years. Now, as you pointed out, Sister Jamel Hill has consistently said, look, poverty is real, right? Yeah. Scottie Pippen was from Arkansas, man. And I don't know many black, rich Arkansanians,
Arkansans, brother.
I think it's Arkansas. Yeah, it's Arkansas.
Sorry, that's one that I don't know many rich ones. And I don't know many, and if it's anything like Mississippi across the river, then we're talking about extreme poverty, right? So Pippen had what? Two black men who were males, not even alpha males, but who were leaders and patriarchs in their family, who was
his father and his older brother. He was one of 12 kids.
Right. They were in the wheelchair, and Pippen had decisions to make. Now we know since then, his contract with the Blazers and his contract with Houston, he ended up making somewhere around 76 to 100 million.
109 million.
Yeah.
Not bad.
His career. But while he was the most impactful number 2 man and arguably a top 5 small forward of all time, right? And arguably one of the best defensive players during that time period, during any time period of any human being, and the only person who could guard Jordan, which I'm pretty sure they're going to talk about in the next episode. Pippen was the only person who could guard Jordan in the Bulls practices. So this guy was a monster, didn't get paid a lot. And also the last thing, I didn't realize the general manager was such
amazing businessman.
So Mondale, what was your big takeaway from The Last Dance?
My biggest takeaway from The Last Dance was a couple things. And
actually, I want you to point this out, Mondale, real quick. Mondale, I want you to talk about the fact that you also aren't a big sports guy, because I think that gives you a really unique. So talk a little bit about how this wasn't even really your thing, and how that frames what your takeaway was.
So let me put a couple things in perspective. I played 0 organized sports as a youth or ever in my life, other than intramurals when I was in the Marine Corps. And one of the main reasons was, we couldn't afford physicals. I'm one of 13 kids, much like Pippen. And Pippen's from the Delta. I'm from a different orange clay dirt. I'm from North Carolina, where we had clay dirt as well. And trying to ask my parents or tax my parents for a physical was too much anyway. Not to mention, I was kind of I was a rebel. as a child. So sports was never my thing because trying to afford gear or anything like that made no sense to me when we could barely afford shoes and socks. I owned no pair of socks growing up. We shared everything, right? So here's my thing. Here's my biggest takeaway, and maybe it's because I'm not a sports person. I saw and heard Pippen's story about like the lack of money as it pertains to let's be relative. $18 million over 7 years is more than most people will see. But for an NBA player, that's not a lot of money, especially when you're not just the best second man. You're one of the best players in the league. That was telling. But I also think what was more telling to me was how Michael Jordan had no sense of camaraderie. He when Pippen was protesting or acting out was angry at Pippen. And not the fact that this man was giving them everything, including championship rings. I also want to point out the fact that this is the NBA, and those 2 hours of watching that show showed me that capitalism is a nasty instrument. Because the owner said with straight confidence and a nice expensive necktie that he knew that Pippen was taking a bad deal. If you are a person and you know that this person is worth more than what you're doing to him, then why continue with it? Why do it anyway? Right. And then he said, once you sign a contract, I wouldn't allow you to come back and renegotiate. Yeah. So to me, the nature of that, what I took away from that was capitalism is nasty, even when we're talking about sports, and it rung true even more because I'm a Black man from the South and I know what poverty will make you do to ensure safety of your people. So, yeah.
So, I got all the impressions that you guys had from it, but I also got another one, which was about how Michael Jordan looked. Now, as a kid, I was not a good basketball player. I ran track. I liked the Bulls like everybody else did. But one of my biggest takeaways from this is how amazing the power of branding can really be. Michael Jordan, from Be Like Mike to Space Jam to everything else like that, was like America's athletic dad, right? He was Bill Cosby. He was all these different things. But by all accounts, he was a pretty awful person to work with. He was.
No, that's a fact. That's a fact.
I agree. I'm just saying, that's kind of like talking about Beyonce, baby.
I'm just saying, and maybe in 25 years, who knows what we'll learn about what it was like to work with her during Destiny's Child. Mind you, she was only a teenager at the time. But by all indicators, Michael Jordan was not a particularly good guy to work with. He was obsessed. He was rude. He was not a team player. He was
his teammates.
Yeah, he was not necessarily helpful to his teammates. And I got a great text from a good friend of mine who is from Cleveland, right? And I was having this conversation from her. She's a big, Cavs fan, LeBron fan. And she's like, you know what? This documentary cements to me why LeBron is the GOAT. And I was like, yo, why is that? Whatever. And she's like, because looking at how Jordan behaved and how he treated those teams, and given everything that he was given, right? He was given Dennis Rodman, who had rings. He was given great management. He was given a fantastic coach. Remember, Phil Jackson had won in the CBA, the Canadian Basketball League, before he even became his GOAT. Jordan ran through 4 coaches, right? Jordan had tons of talent and great management around him. LeBron has had none of those things. LeBron has never had a Hall of Fame coach. He's never had a Hall of Fame GM. He only had Hall of Fame teammates for one short period of time. Okay, fine. At the time he had Pat Riley. And she said, and yet in the midst of all of that, coming from poverty, coming from a situation where he basically had to be.
Marcus, stop. I mean,
he basically had to be the man of the house early on. LeBron still fought to make sure that his teammates got contracts, some of whom these brothers are still eating off of contracts that LeBron got them 5 years ago. Some of these cats ain't even made a jump shot or dribbled a basketball in years, and LeBron still got them paid.
Yeah, so I agree with that. I also
came away thinking, you know what? I think my girl is right. Michael Jordan is an amazing, amazing player. He's not been a good GM. He was a borderline sociopath to work with. And if I had a choice as to who I would have to spend my prime years with, I'd rather be with the guy who was trying to get me paid and pass me the ball and make the whole team a wonderful experience rather than somebody who is pathologically driven to win at all costs, regardless of how anybody else felt.
Jason, I will say this, and Marcus, I'm gonna let you go real quick. I want to respond to something Jason said. You said something about branding and the importance of branding.
Yeah.
Jordan was definitely like branded well, because even in the documentary, and when you started talking, you said about Jordan, I laughed and said about the team, and I was jokingly when I said that. I was joking when I said that because it wasn't about the team. It was about Jordan, and people need to know that. While Phil Jackson came up with the term "last dance," it was all about Jordan, right? Mm-hmm. And the way you know that is because Jordan had a problem with the general manager too, and he used to ridicule the general manager as well. Yep. They just didn't cover it the way they covered Pippen's problem with the general manager. Go ahead,
I will say this, and I saw this online. A couple of people I talked about, and this is also that beautiful thing about pre-social media life, and we didn't have the same kind of news coverage. We obviously these guys couldn't tweet, they couldn't talk. When I hear from folks who were growing up in Chicago, apparently in Chicago, they were hearing this, right? But we weren't. We were in North Carolina, Ohio. We were all sorts of Virginia, all sorts of different parts of the country. But it's really interesting to me how the Chicago people are like, oh, yeah, y'all didn't even know. And I will tell you this quick story before we do I'm gonna pick and choose before we do our wrap. I got to say this. I remember talking to a very good friend of mine who is a news anchor, beautiful, beautiful, really, really talented woman, who told me stories about what it was like covering Michael Jordan. She's like, that guy is one of the meanest people who I've ever had to interview, ever had to work with. And that's saying something given all the different kinds of people that she interviewed and worked with. And she's like, I remember being out at dinner with him and several other players. And Jordan would do this on a regular basis. He would see a couple on a date, married, single, whatever it is, and he would just send flowers and champagne and pay for dinners for the woman there, send her notes, tell her she was beautiful. And he would do it just to emasculate the guy that she was on the date with and then laugh about it. She's like, I literally sat in a restaurant with him. She was like a beautiful hotel restaurant. He told the waiter, hey, go downstairs to the floors, give that woman a bouquet of flowers, blah, blah, blah. And of course, when it starts, the guy's like, okay, cool. Michael Jordan sending stuff to my wife. But then he would just keep doing it. And she's like, I saw him do that several times. He was a really pathologically competitive and abusive person. Great basketball player, but not necessarily the guy you want to go with.
Go ahead, Marcus.
I want to say one thing. 6 rings, baby. 6 rings.
What does that matter, though?
Right.
Robert Ory's got 6 rings.
And I'm not even finishing my doggone statement. 6 rings, and he was a horrible human while he was getting those 6 rings. But what I will say, unlike you told me the other night, LeBron won a championship and empowered his whole team with Cleveland. In comparison to understanding what a teammate really is, what a teammate really means, and making sure that they're straight. There would have probably been some more concise conversations team-wide about management if Jordan had just stepped up and said, hey, You know what? I'm not only do I want to retire with these brothers, I want to keep this ring. I want to keep fighting this championship until we lose the championship. Let Houston beat us. Let the Lakers beat us. Let the up-and-coming Orlando Magic beat us. Let whoever that comes to the table beat us. But until we get beaten, then we need to stay together. And that shows you the evolution, because I will give the NBA props before we end. I'll give the NBA props because they've evolved into more so they listen to their players. They agree, they pay their players. They agree with their players. And unlike the sort of NFL mentality of right now, that the NBA had back then. So I mean, Jordan played into the role, right? So it is what it is. The man still won 6 championships, and nothing about his attitude is going to take away from me personally. That's the GOAT.
So before we go, because I want to ask people, I want to also recognize that we are 2 minutes over time.
Yes.
Give us 4 minutes because we have an important topic that we need to talk about. Something turned 31 so we need to talk about that. Something that turned 31 today. We need to talk about that. It's big.
Oh, okay. I don't want to go too far over, but yes, we
So let's stick around. You guys give us 4 or 5 more minutes to just set this out. And I also want to get Jason's response to what Marcus said about Jordan. And does his 6th ring? Are they not marked about how nasty he was as a person?
So I'll say this quick, and then we'll go to our 31, and then we'll do a close. Number one, I'm not a rings guy. for any sport. I'm really not, and I never have been. I still think Jordan is an amazing player, but I cannot look at any sport and look at the individual. The only sport that you can look at and say this person is a Hall of Famer and brilliant on their own merits is baseball, because it's stats oriented. Basketball is always dependent on being around other good people. So Jordan's 6 rings, he owes some of those to Steve Kerr. He owes some of those to Dennis Rodman. He owes some of those to Scottie Pippen. He owes a lot of those to Phil Jackson, right? LeBron James has never been, LeBron James is probably the player who has done so much more with so little than I think almost any other team athlete.
Miami? Are you serious, Little?
That's only one team, Marcus.
Allow me, Marcus. What I'm saying is, if you look at the totality of his career compared to the coaches that Wayne Gretzky had, compared to the coaches that Magic had, compared to the coach that Tom Brady has, compared to the coaches that Steph Curry has had, you look at what LeBron has had as far as management and coaching and teammates for a 15-year career, and you see what he's been able to accomplish. He is probably one of the greatest team athletes we've ever seen. If you look at Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen probably became a Hall of Fame player in part by playing with Jordan. I can get that. But Dennis Rodman was already on his way. Steve Kerr was already the leading three-point shooter in the history of forever.
There's another brother on that team that was leading.
I'm sorry?
Craig Hodges. Craig Hodges don't get any credit because he disrespected Bush by saying your policies on Africa are horrible, and they kicked him out of the NBA. But yeah.
But what I'm saying is, if you look from top to bottom, the kind of teams that Michael Jordan got to play with, if you look from top to bottom, as much as they want to turn Jerry Krause into the bad guy instead of Reinsdorf, who I also think is part of it, you look at that management, you look at that coaching, you look at the talent that he had to play with. That was an incredibly amazing situation for him to be in. LeBron James has never had that. He had for 4 years. And remember the garbage pail team that he had his first year in Miami. It was that second year team that was really the only one that was great. And by that point, he didn't have some of these guys in his prime because Dwayne Wade's knees completely went out on him.
He had Pat Riley.
LeBron James did not get to grow up with great talent. LeBron James has still never had a Hall of Fame coach. He had Pat Riley as his GM for 4 years.
And don't take away from the black coach, the
career, which is not what most other people have.
To Jason's point, when Jordan left the Bulls, Scottie Pippen still took them to the finals.
Yeah.
Jordan went to Washington, they did nothing.
Yes.
They did nothing. So LeBron James has never done nothing.
Never. He has had a poo-poo platter team. He has taken 5 guys. He's taken 5 guys out of the gym parking lot in a Roomba and still managed to make the playoffs. Now, I want to say this because we want to do a happy celebration anniversary. Thank you guys for staying with us for a couple minutes. We want to make sure we get through everybody's thing. But I like retro history. Retro News at Retro News is actually one of my favorite Twitter follows because they have all this sort of great retro news and history and dates and everything else like that. Today,
Jason, you're on Twitter?
Around this very quickly.
Jason, you're on Twitter?
I'm sorry?
You're on Twitter?
No. That's where I got. That's where I got.
No, I'm saying, are you on Twitter?
Yes. At Dr. Jason Johnson.
Marcus, are you on Twitter?
Yeah, Marcus for America.
I was going to say that. I want to say real quick, and this will be our last closing thought because people have been polite. They've stayed with us for an extra 5 minutes. Today is the 31-year anniversary birthday of the launch of Nintendo's Game Boy. Now, that's a big thing. It was the first handheld thing that wasn't one of those small sort of automatic battery powered things. It transformed how everybody played video games. It transformed what you could do and how you could envision yourself playing video games, which results in changes from everything from sports to handheld communication, everything else like that. So in closing, I want everybody to give their quick thoughts. First off, what was your earliest experience with a video game like Game Boy? Did you have a Game Boy? How did it change you? How did it change your gaming to this day? And then we're going to go through everybody's Twitter addresses, and then we'll be out. Marcus.
Hey, Marcus.
No, I'm going to let you go.
Go ahead, Marcus.
Marcus, we'll start with you.
Well, then I'll end it afterwards. What I am going to say is I owned every game. I played. Yeah, I'm horrible. My mom bought me a Game Boy after working 2 jobs. right? Like 3 jobs actually, right? Just to afford a Game Boy. I had one, and because probably I was a obnoxious poor kid that wanted to keep up with the Joneses. I'm a gamer to this day. And the Game Boy literally made it was like the first cell phone, right? When people put a cell phone in your kid's hands and say, shut up, do something. In 1959, the Game Boy was the shut up and do something. So I became a much more tamer kid that my mother didn't have to whoop all the time because I was sitting still and playing the Game Boy. Super Mario Brothers 2. Zelda was on there. They had a basketball game that was on there. The most important game of my history that I still can't beat TJ Rose at is Tetris. Tetris was the staple game for everybody. A lot of people have played Tetris in different forms of fashion. So it's kind of cool. I wish I had an original, and it's interesting. The last fact about it is interesting. You can buy a Game Boy for your cell phone cover right now.
Right.
And that costs $29. And I remember the Game Boy like maxing out at $129 or somewhere between $100, like $89 to like $200 when it first came out. So it's amazing what technology can do. And happy birthday, Game Boy, man. You started a whole generation of gaming and created game developers.
Mondale.
Jason, go ahead, Jason. You're a gamer, so I want to hear the gamer's point. Then
I'm not a gamer. I'm actually not a gamer. So that, and like I said, when we talked earlier in production, I wanted to hear your perspective on this because you didn't do this. So Mondale.
Yeah. So for me, first of all, I'm too ADHD to sit in the house or anywhere and look at a screen for too much time. Like I'm gonna go outside and play it like I'm a tree or run through a cornfield and have cornfield wars, which is a game we played in infield. And it was so much more enlightening and like character developing than a Game Boy. I will say this though, I do remember the want and desire for a Game Boy, not pressing my mom and dad, because I mean we had, like I said, I'm one of 13 kids, and not to keep beating a dead horse, but you know, frivolous things were not something you were going to get in my household. Like, and a Game Boy made no sense unless you were trying to buy 6 or 7 of those things, and that wasn't happening. I mean, we went out to eat a couple times my entire childhood, let alone get a game. So I think the Game Boy's staying power. What I've noticed is people that do play games, all the limitations and problems people used to talk about with the Game Boy, because it really was a Nintendo's way to combat what Sega was doing to their market, which was Atari's market. So what I do know is what people complain about, now they love the Game Boy for it. And I think that's something amazing about time, and also the Nintendo being ahead of the game, or ahead of the market. 31 years ahead of the market, because like Marcus said, it is now changed into a cell phone cover where you still can play games on. So the Game Boy, shout out to you being 31, 10 years younger than me, literally almost to the day, because next Monday I'll be 41. Selfless plug to me being old. I will say this though, I applaud people that I know people that still have their original Game Boy, and they brag about it and they love it, and they tell stories about the Game Boy as if it was, their first teddy bear.
All right, I'll say this, and then we're gonna close with Marcus. I never had a Game Boy. I didn't want a Game Boy. It wasn't for financial reasons. It wasn't for technical reasons. It was because, quite frankly, and it's interesting from a purely technological standpoint, I didn't like it. My favorite game when I was a kid on my Nintendo was Castlevania. Castlevania was my first favorite game. My second favorite game was Ninja Gaiden. They never really had Ninja Gaiden for Game Boy. And in Castlevania, it was slow and it was gray and it was not.
What is Castlevania?
Huh?
What is Castlevania?
I'm gonna send you YouTube. Castlevania was like one of the hottest games ever. It's a cartoon now on Netflix. I love Castlevania. But
like play games with whips.
Exactly. It's a game of whips and chains. So I was never really into the Game Boy. I never understood, and it always struck me, Game Boy to me was like the laser disc. Everybody was so excited about the beta technology without realizing what the real deal was going to be. I remember looking at the Game Boy and being like, this is trash, and they're probably going to make one in color in 2 or 3 years, and I'll just wait for that. I don't want to pay a slow gray version of a game that I can play on my Nintendo. Just like people used to love Laserdisc. Oh my God, it's great color. You got to literally flip it upside down halfway through the movie like a record. Why don't you wait a couple years? They'll probably come out with something else. Oh, boom, by 99, we had DVD. So I was never really transformed by the Game Boy, but I will say this, to this day, and mine hasn't been here, Mark has been in my house, I still game, but I only like retro games. I got a big old game system that has 1,000 old games on it. It's got Dig Dug, Burger Time, Pac-Man, Street Fighter. I don't like long extended games that take 90 hours and have 3D environments. That stuff bores me. It gets on my nerves. I want to be able to play Burger Time and make the sandwiches fall, or play Pac-Man or Dig Dug for 8 minutes before I go back to work. So I've never been that much of a gamer. Anyway, thank you guys so very much. Marcus, you got our final thought. You got to ride us all out because we're over time.
Listen, it's very simple. Love life, protect yourself. Georgia, do not go out Friday, and do not change your habits of what you're doing right now unless you're already outside. I want to give everybody a shout out for watching us. Please like and share our page. That is Clickbait, the political thirst trap. Continue to watch us. Next Thursday, we'll be back at 8:30. And also, lastly, a very important announcement. We are looking for artists to do some graphics for us. Please go out of your way if you know someone, if you're watching right now and you know someone who can, who has skill set with Photoshop or with their pen and pad or whatever, submit something to our page. Go to our inbox and at the political Clickbaity political thirst trap. And lastly, share this post, follow us. Much love, stay safe. Thanks everybody. Mondale Robinson, Jason Johnson, my brothers. Love y'all. Peace.
Later.
Peace, y'all.
Trap squad, 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 trap squad. Hey, clickbaity political. Yeah, thirst trap, trap squad, squirrel squad. Our mission is critical to speak the truth to the masses. Yeah. We here for the fight. We ain't started, but we here to finish it. Sick and tired of seeing the privilege. Take advantage of the weak and the innocent. So we let a voice be heard. Every single weeknight. Unapologetic. Yeah. Black people, despite this white supremacist system that we live through on a daily, we still throwing up those acorns cause we represent clickbaity. Yeah. Trap squad, trap squad, trap squad. Let me hear ya. Trap squad, trap squad. Throw those squirrels up if you with it. Trap squad, trap squad. Yeah, I see you, yeah, I see you. Trap squad, trap squad. Trap squad, thirst trap. Trap squad, trap squad. Trap squad. Let me hear ya. Trap squad, trap squad. Throw those squirrels up if you with it. Trap squad, trap squad. Yeah, I see you.